These days, AI coding assistants are everywhere. They promise to make us faster, smarter, and more efficient developers. But what if I told you that Cursor, one of the most popular AI coding assistants, isn't for code? Now, I have to be honest, for the longest time I was a skeptic. To me, using an AI for my work felt like getting a meal from a vending machine. You press a button and a finished, prepackaged thing comes out. It's convenient, but it's not particularly fun. I like writing code. I also like cooking. I don't want my meals to come out of a box. I want to have the experience of working with the ingredients. Getting my code from an AI felt like it was automating away all of the things I really enjoyed. But then something happened. A simple problem led me down a path I never expected, and it completely changed my mind. So what happened? I needed to brainstorm some SQL queries for another video I was doing, and I was struggling. I had a basic table structure like the one you see here, but nothing was catching my interest. The truth is, SQL isn't my first language, and I really wasn't looking forward to spending hours wrestling with it to find what I needed. So I thought, okay, let's see what the vending machine can do. I gave it my request, and it returned what looked like a promising result. However, it turns out it was just wrong. See, if you look at this query, you'll notice that it's creating a window based on a field named event time. The problem was there was no field named event time in my original specification. My first reaction was, see, it's just a machine. But then I tried something different. Instead of giving up or starting over, I continued the conversation and gave it some additional context to work with. I informed it that there's a built-in row time field that it could use instead, and sure enough, it gave me back a modified response. Look closely and you'll see that event time has been correctly replaced with row time. I continued with this process, iterating against my tables and refining the results until I had a set of queries that I felt pretty good about. And then something clicked. This wasn't a vending machine at all. I wasn't pushing a button and getting a prepackaged result. I was in a collaborative process. I was the chef and the AI was a cook, helping me prepare the dish. I could give feedback, review the response, and guide the design toward a final result. The AI wasn't a machine for dispensing finished products, it was my partner in the process. Now, to be fair, this is a simplified example. The actual task was far more complex than what I've shown. But it sparked a bigger question. If it can help me with this project, what other projects can I build? To answer that question, I decided to try something completely wild. I asked Cursor to help me with one of my hobbies, Dungeons and Dragons. I had an idea for an adventure that had been sitting in the back of my mind for ages, so I described it to Cursor. The conversation was pretty long and involved, so here's a simpler example. The important thing to notice is that I'm not asking for code anymore. I'm creating a story. And the result from Cursor was astonishing. In my original conversation, I was able to build a detailed campaign with rich characters, detailed descriptions, and complex rules, including stat blocks for all the enemies. In my simpler example, it produced a detailed 5-room dungeon, complete with character stats, puzzle ideas, and thematic descriptions. But like with the code, I didn't stop there. I kept working with Cursor, iterating on the results, until I had something I was happy with. And that was the critical revelation. I looked at what Cursor had helped me create, and I realized the truth. Cursor isn't a tool for code. It's a tool for ideas. I asked it for assistance with a technical SQL problem, and it worked. Then I asked it to design a fantasy adventure, and it helped with that too. And it did a pretty good job of both, even if it needed a bit of coaxing to get it where I wanted. The journey from a simple coding problem to designing fantasy worlds taught me that people often look at these tools the wrong way. With that in mind, I've developed 3 secrets to help unlock Cursor's potential. Secret number 1. Cursor isn't actually for code, it's for text. Code is just one type of text. Thinking of Cursor as only a code writer is very limiting. It narrows your scope and prevents you from seeing the larger picture. It's like thinking that a chef can only cook one dish. That's going to severely limit what you can order. This is important because once you start to broaden your scope, You can start using Cursor to create artifacts around your code, such as documentation, slide presentations, and more. Secret number 2, context is king. By asking Cursor to work on only a single file, we're limiting it. We're restricting it from having access to vast amounts of context that exist throughout our project. It's like asking a chef to cook a gourmet meal but only giving them a single carrot. You get much better results when you give them access to the whole pantry. When you give Cursor the entire project, including documentation or other artifacts, you give it the context it needs to create something truly special. And that leads to the final secret. Think in projects, not documents. Once you give Cursor access to more than just your code, you start thinking about the entire project and how everything interacts. For example, how do changes in your code impact your documentation? You stop asking the chef to prepare a single dish and instead give them the freedom to craft an entire meal. Now let's put these ideas to work. Think about a typical coding project. The actual code might only be 30% of the total work. You also have to deal with comments, README files, API documentation, technical specifications, requirements, and more. This is where Cursor truly shines. Rather than dumping all of those critical documents into separate tools, what if you instead put them all into Cursor? Now you can reference the requirements or technical specifications when you ask Cursor to write a function. Or you can ask Cursor to update the API documentation for the function you just wrote. Because it has access to all of that context, it can be far more effective in helping you with your work. It's a bit like having the project manager and technical writers sitting right next to you, ready to collaborate on everything you build. Now, as exciting as these tools are, they aren't magic. Before we dive into how to use them responsibly, we need to understand what AI actually is and what it isn't. AI isn't actually intelligent. It's incredibly good at spotting patterns in text and predicting what should come next, but it's not really thinking about what it's doing. This makes it a powerful brainstorming tool. It can recognize what you're trying to ask and predict some really great answers, but don't expect it to do all the work for you. A colleague of mine once said about 3D printing that it's great for prototyping but terrible for production. And I can't think of a better way to describe these AI tools. They are excellent collaborators for the creative process, but you need to be the one guiding it, reviewing the work, and making the final decisions. With that in mind, let's talk about how to use these tools responsibly. First, a powerful tool doesn't replace skill. An AI assistant is an incredibly powerful tool. It can help you do things you couldn't do before, such as writing idiomatic code in languages you aren't familiar with. But it doesn't replace your judgment, your expertise, or your unique voice. When I use it for code, it makes mistakes, and sometimes needs guidance correcting them. And when I use it for creative endeavors like Dungeons and Dragons, it often makes decisions I don't like, and I have to steer it back on track. It assists the creator, it never replaces them. The second principle is trust but verify. Sometimes the AI will make things up. It might invent an API, misremember a fact, or confidently state something that's just plain wrong. We call these hallucinations, and it's your job to catch them. You are the final editor. The last thing you want is to deploy code to production that breaks your entire application, or create a dungeon for your campaign with rules that just don't work. Always verify the results. The final principle: know when to stop. Remember what we learned earlier. AI is great for prototyping, but terrible for production. Use it for brainstorming, first drafts, documentation, and explanations. But don't use it for critical decisions, security-sensitive code, or your final production implementation. The tools can get you 80% of the way there, but you need to take it across the finish line. That means testing the code it creates, proofreading documentation, and potentially making significant changes to the results. You can certainly use the AI to help you with that process, but sometimes it's more efficient just to step in and do it yourself. The key is knowing where that line is. So what's the real purpose of tools like Cursor? The internet hype machine will tell you that AI makes you 10 times faster and it's coming for your job. I fell for some of this hype, believing AI was a shortcut that would steal the best parts of the creative process. But I was wrong. AI doesn't always make you faster. And it's not here to steal your job. It can provide insights into the project you might have otherwise missed. And it can do the tedious work that you'd much rather ignore. But remember, you are the chef. Even though the AI can help eliminate many of your tedious tasks, it still needs you to be in charge, driving the creative parts of the process. So, my final message is this: don't use AI to replace the work that brings you joy. Use it to clear away the tedious work that stands in your path. The question is no longer if you'll use AI, the question is what will you create with it?